As we are joined now by a repeat guest and always a man welcome on the program tonight, Dr. Walid Phares. He is co-author of the book, The Confrontation, Winning the War Against Future Jihad, in paperback from Palgrave Macmillan. He serves as an advisor to the Anti-Terrorism Caucus in the U.S. House of Representatives. He previously was on the advisory board of the Task Force on Future Terrorism of the Department of Homeland Security and the Advisory Task Force on Nuclear Terrorism. He has taught global strategies at the National Defense University since '06, and at one time was a professor of Middle East Studies and Comparative Politics at Florida Atlantic University. Dr. Phares, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me tonight.
All right, your overview, the thought about, we'll start just with the finding and removing of al-Awlaki and just the importance of that. Then we'll get into the aspect of him being a U.S. citizen.
Well, first of all, this is a long-range operation, meaning al-Awlaki was targeted by the United States as he targeted the United States. This is the world of terrorism, counter-terrorism, intelligence, and counterintelligence. So that moment was bound to happen. It did happen with his boss, actually, bin Laden. It happened with him and with others. So that should not be a surprise. Now, what is important for the United States, Jim, is that there are two important dimensions for al-Awlaki. Number one, not only he was a commander of al-Qaeda out of Yemen, he was one of the major coordinators of task forces, of cells that would coordinate from different countries. His reach was across the Arabian Peninsula, into Africa, Somalia. Remember that he had recruited a jihadist from Nigeria, Abdul Muttalib, the famous, infamous Christmas Day bomber. And the second most important dimension, and I close here, is the fact that he was American not just by citizenship, that's not the issue, or by birth. He was the head of an American jihadi network. That is the most important thing. And two of the attempts that he encouraged were bloody. One of them very much, the Fort Hood attack. So yes, it was an important tactical victory for the United States, but the jury is still out to determine if it was strategic, meaning if this will really weaken al-Qaeda or it's one battle among many.
We of course hear that al-Qaeda is so decentralized that even a charismatic leader like, frankly, al-Awlaki and also, of course, Osama bin Laden, even the loss of people like that is not fatal to an organization that is not a top-down lion authority kind of group. Still, this man's conversance with the Western world, his language skills obviously were an aid in recruiting.
I don't want to minimize what happened because practically speaking, organizationally speaking, of course it's a loss, and a tremendous one. But let's be very objective. Al-Awlaki and before him, many other commanders and emirs of al-Qaeda, when they are hit, when they are killed, the psychological reactions of others is not deterrence. We could make a mistake by thinking that al-Qaeda and the mafia would react for the same way. With the war in the mafia, you take out a few, and the rest are deterred because they want life. They want peace for themselves and in addition to interest. In this case of al-Qaeda or any other jihadist network, when a leader is hit, the reaction of the rank and file is that this is the moment, decided by Allah. This is when, he is going to join the Jannah, the paradise, and then we're going to come up to the front line. It's an absolutely different outlook. Second, with regard to al-Awlaki himself and the whole, myth of him being the only guy who knew how to speak American, that is not true. He was one of many. And I have concluded today in a piece saying that al-Awlaki, had enough time to create other al-Awlakis, and we're going to see soon. And we have the evidence because of the number of people of the homegrown that we have stopped, and those are only the minority. So we have to put it in context to understand that this is a battle in a war. This is not the end of the war.
Yeah, and that is a very important thing to emphasize clearly, just by virtue of the fact that, I don't know, it seems ingrained in the American psyche. We want instant answers and final solutions to all of this sort of thing. And if we don't develop a greater sense of patience as a society and a culture, that's going to hurt us in this very protracted conflict, is it not?
Absolutely. The fact that we concentrate, for example, on killing the leader as a benchmark of measurement of victory, it's not with the jihadists. That doesn't work with the jihadists. They are produced in waves by the factories. What will measure the defeat of the jihadists is their capacity or non-capacity of recruiting. Recruitment is everything for the jihadists, not the fact that we are, eliminating a number of them. And to determine if we are winning over them in terms of recruitment, are we identifying that ideology? Are we bringing down those factories of radicalization? And third and most important, as we are in the year of the Arab Spring, will societies in the region reject them? That's the ultimate question.
Yeah. Explain to us, if you could, and we're really talking about a stretch here because I don't know that there's any way to fully understand this, but the appeal, of course, of all of this is totally lost on my very westernized psyche. But you approach someone, let's say a young person who could be a recruit, and you say, why don't we just throw away your life, and in the process of not only ending your own life, but we can also end a lot of other people's lives. We can do so in a violent act against innocent parties, but we'll make you a promise, I don't know, for your 72 virgins or what have you. It is not persuasive to me. Could you at all explain to us what there is about this as opposed to, let's say, living your life, or even if you're opposed to whatever, the existence of Israel or American imperialism or whatever, of working to fight that in some way other than just becoming an instant martyr in a way that will change nothing except killing a handful of people, yourself included?
Yes, absolutely. Well, one thing is clear, that the making of a jihadist, and let alone of a suicide bomber, is not a mechanism of overnight, meaning somebody wakes up, he had a problem in the family, has a divorce in the family, he lost his job, he has, social or racial stresses, then he decides to go and kill himself and kill others. That's not how it works. The missing link that many in the West do not understand or have not been informed about, because it's about education, is the fact that political education, ideological indoctrination is a long process. And the early stages of it do occur early on, not really at the age of 20, 21. It's in your childhood. If you happen to have been indoctrinated in a madrasa, online, in the family, and elsewhere, by individuals who are influential on your mind, in the sense that there is a chip, which is the raison d'etre, meaning how the world appears to you. If that is done, if that is messed up, then when the recruiter from Al-Qaeda shows up, it's really late. And it goes like this: Are you a believer in the jihad? And if you are a believer in the jihad, are you a believer in your own role in that jihad? So two different stations. And that process is done really at a long range of a reaction. And we see that at one point in time, some do not hesitate to just jump into the process of suicide bombers, and others do hesitate. So there are jihadists, but they don't want to engage in the final act.
Wow. 1-866-50-JIMBO is our number, and that begs a follow-up question that I'm going to bring up after this quick break that we take here. Again, our guest is Dr. Walid Phares, a repeat guest on the Jim Bohannon Show. He's an advisor to the Anti-Terrorism Caucus in the U.S. House of Representatives, and his website is his name, WalidPhares.com, WalidPhares.com. WalidPhares, WalidPhares.com. More to come. We'll be right back. Talking with terrorism expert Dr. Walid Phares, now an advisor to the Anti-Terrorism Caucus in the U.S. Congress. His website is his name, WalidPhares.com, WalidPhares.com. When you speak about the background of these people and how they have essentially been, brainwashed for all of their formative years, that takes us right to those very madrasas to which you referred. These, in many cases, maybe not all, but in many cases, are little hate academies, and they are breeding people who kill. why are we tolerating the existence of these things? And by that I mean anywhere, on our soil, anywhere in the world. If this is the breeding ground for terrorism, why are they not being eradicated by us? And by that I mean with any means available.
You know, this is the actual essence of the entire war on terror. The war on terror cannot be won outside a war of ideas. It's impossible. I mean, we could continue to take out leader after commander. We are at the almost 11th year of the war, and we've achieved 2 battlefields and now possibly a 3rd in Libya and task forces around the world. We've been very successful. I mean, our military and intelligence, when tasked with a mission to eliminate the enemy, they're doing so. But they cannot provide the result in the war of ideas. That's something that our strategic communication commanders, our politicians, our leaders, our decision to actually consider that there is a war of ideas. And that's what the problem is, Jim. Over the past 5 to 6 years, the last 2 years of the previous administration and the last 3 years of this administration, one thing was in common across the bureaucracy: the decision not to identify the ideology. See, that's the essence. If we do not identify the ideology, therefore, madrasa or no madrasa, online or not online, we can't make any progress. You've got to first say, this is National Socialism, this is how we're going to go after it. But if we say, oh, these are violent extremists, and we ignore the mammoth in the room, then we can't get to those madrasas. We know that they exist, but we don't have a policy towards them. And you're absolutely right. If we don't deal with the madrasas, we are not going to win this actual war on terror.
Well, you know, this administration, what you just said would make them recoil like you'd touched them with a cattle prod. They do not want to ever offend anyone, which to me seems like a terribly unrealistic approach to this. I'm sorry, but you've got to pretty much state what is and not pretend that things were some other way.
You know, they have been, all the administrations, especially this one, very badly advised by their own experts, because you don't need to offend to actually identify the ideology. That's the beauty of it. And I use the term ideology. They are afraid that the ideology is religion. No, my friend, in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, they know how to make a difference and differentiate between the ideology and the religion. I mean, when I am on Arab TV, and I quite go every 2-3 days, what do we call the actual terrorists in Arabic? We call them the Salafists, the Jihadists, sometimes the Islamists. I'm saying the Arab world media. So if in the Arab sphere we identify and we know and what have you, in Saudi, in Morocco, in Jordan, in Kuwait, and elsewhere, why is it that in the free world in the West we do not? I think the decision makers have been fooled, quote unquote, by our expertise. And if you ask me the question, why would the experts do this? Well, guess what? They are funded mostly by programs funded by petrodollars. It's a full circle.
Wow. Well, that is the hallmark, of course, of Dr. Walid Phares. He spells it right out. My goodness. Are you at all optimistic that we're going to bring forward a realistic approach to this situation? Because I'll be frank, this administration isn't going to do what you just outlined, never in a million years.
Well, that's precisely why I would be worried on a strategic level. And I'm very objective. The last 2 years of the previous administration, you had a bureaucracy that has operated in the same sense. Actually, it's the same bureaucracy with regard to these issues as the entire administration right now. And the more this administration decides to go away from facing off with the actual ideological problem, it's going to find itself facing off with a much greater problem. We all know Al-Qaeda today is 10 times bigger than Al-Qaeda 5-6 years ago. So we go and just to hide away from that, we say, oh, we are depleting the leadership. Yes, we are, but we are depleting the leadership of its prehistory. Bin Laden in 2001 is different than Bin Laden of this year, and he should have, and he did meet his Justice Act. But practically speaking, how many generations of jihadists have been produced because of this war of ideas? How many al-Awlakis, to go back to our issue, have been produced? How many American jihadists? Every 2 weeks, we are stopping one of them.
Yeah.
Every 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. Dr. Walid Phares, again, his website, walidphares.com, his book, The Confrontation, from Palmgrave Macmillan. Thank you for being with us. This is Westwood One.